Hello everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candice Marie. Thanks for joining me. I'll be your astrologer today. Today we are going to be previewing Mars' transit through the sign of Taurus. Very excited to talk about this transit. I've touched on it a little bit in my North Node Uranus videos and the importance of really paying attention to this transit because Mars rules the South Node that's going on right now. So the South Node in Scorpio, all about releasing, dealing with karma, grief, pain, loss, anything in relationship to finances, secrets, the list goes on and on. So this is not going to be me focusing too much on the nodes. It's going to be me more talking about the transit of Mars through the sign of Taurus and what we may expect. Now we know that throughout this transit, Mars is going to get a little banged up, which Mars doesn't mind doing. He's a little rough and tumble. But as Mars moves through the sign of Taurus, technically it's debilitated. So that basically means that you've got Mars, which is a planet about passion and energy and war, cutting, blood, aggression, anger. It's this more like animalistic side of our personalities. We've got Mars that's in a Venus sign, right? So Venus is technically the ruler of both Taurus and Libra and exalted in Pisces. So it's almost like you're taking Mars and you're putting Mars in a very Venusian kind of landscape. So it's not this whole blood and guts and glory. It's more smelling the flowers, slowing down, and it can really kind of frustrate Mars and force Mars to go through like a obstacle course that it's not really entirely thrilled about going through, if that makes sense. So this video can be helpful for those of you guys who also have Mars in Taurus, or if you have like a really strong placement of like maybe Mars in your second house. That could be another way that this energy could kind of play out. If you're looking for how this is going to affect your sign particularly, I would recommend checking out my horoscopes. I have the horoscopes out for the month of July. This is one of the big transits that I do touch on, and I talk about where Mars is transiting through Taurus for each and every one of the 12 signs. You want to listen for your ascendant. I will do a recap at the end of this video just as a reminder to those of you guys who haven't seen it where this is taking place. But if you want those predictions and tarot, check out my horoscopes. So Taurus, you know, the bull, right, which deals with fertility and beauty and art, and anything that stimulates the senses, right? What tastes good, feels good, smells good. Mars moving into the sign, especially if you're a Mars ruled chart. So if you're a Aries or a Scorpio rising, perhaps maybe in the last like 48 hours, you really felt that shift. We know that we can't really talk about this Mars transit without talking about the Mars square Pluto aspect that was actually building right here around the beginning of July, just prior to Mars's ingress into Taurus. Now, this was an interesting one, even if we go back a little bit further here, just after the new moon that we had in Cancer around the 29th and the 30th, the moon in Cancer moved to square Mars and oppose Pluto. So this basically set up like an emotional response. There was some kind of like friction, conflict, emotional conflict, anything revolving around changes and transformations, Pluto, in regards to our responsibilities and our career or governing powers. That's always Capricorn, and our home life, our family, our security, and our roots. So we saw that with the opposition that was going on from the moon to Pluto and the square to Mars. A little tense, right? The end of June going into the beginning of July. So then we saw the Mars-Pluto square perfect really over like the 1st and the 2nd of July. Mars hit that 29 degrees on the 4th of July. I would imagine there was just a lot of accidents with fireworks, you know, Mars being things that we light or things that could explode or kind of like blow up. Certainly seen a lot of those videos on the internet recently. I think part of that's also just the North Node Uranus conjunction. People are a little bit riskier, taking more risks than usual. So when Mars is at that 29 energetic degree, there is this sense of like the volume being turned up really loud. I just noticed like over the whole first 4 days of July, just everybody was really on edge. Unfortunately, we've seen it materialize as yet another series of events here in America that's kind of horrific. I mean, I had a feeling that the Mars-Pluto squares was going to be a continuation of what could be some violent acts. And I don't think that we've seen the end of it, unfortunately, especially as we see Mars inch closer and closer to Uranus. But that 29 degrees does represent a tipping point, right? And Mars, it rules Aries, so being in that sign, it almost had like a higher advantage to Pluto. So if you have a Mars-ruled sign, perhaps maybe you just noticed that things have just been a little bit more intense the last week or so than usual. So then Mars tips into Taurus on the 5th of July and it enters 0 degrees. Now, 0 degrees in astrology is a very potent point. It represents the purest form of that energy. And so I wonder how everybody was feeling yesterday and today with Mars hovering around that, 0 to now as I'm filming this, 1 degree. I felt everything slow down big time yesterday. I realized that I couldn't work the same way that I usually would. Usually I can, get up and get a couple things done and kind of juggle content and also juggle setting up courses and doing a couple of different things. And it was like halfway through the day, I was like, I need to eat lunch and take a nap. It was like very Taurus, and I think that this is interesting, just from what I've noticed, the experience of having Mars and Taurus so far has made me realize that anything that is worth working hard for, it's going to take time and it's going to need a little bit of finesse. Taurus can also be associated with like artistry and, putting your mark on something and really perfecting something and making something very beautiful, very valuable. And I'm realizing with Taurus transits in general, I saw this in, April, May, and then during the eclipses and as Venus went through there, less is more. Although some Tauruses would argue more is more, less is more. And really taking our time and easing into things, because Mars in Aries can definitely go, it can start. It's like being shot out of a cannon, but it has a tendency to burn up overly quick. So it's more like a sprint. It's not necessarily a long distance race, right? I would give that more to maybe Mars in Sag or Mars in Capricorn. So the shift from Mars into Taurus made me realize that, it's going to take a little bit longer to get things done. There's going to be a need to really kind of ground things out and plan and be strategic and be logical and practical when it comes to just getting the job done. And because Mars is in a Venus house now, or a Venus sign, we have to also take into consideration that there is kind of like this interesting energy that is activating both the north and the south node. So the south node being what we're moving away from, what we're clearing, what we're purging, what we're detoxifying out of our lives. And Mars being the ruler of Scorpio, which is like hot water, boiling, purging, cleansing, fire and water purification. And it's also a very intense kind of Mars placement. It's much more emotionally intense. So perhaps maybe our emotional need for a release or an outlet for frustration or anger or fear or scarcity is incentivizing Mars right now to become more proactive and to start focusing on getting something done, right? But like I said, Venus and the sign of Taurus really puts an emphasis on, are we comfortable? Do we have what we need to survive? Survival skills come very strongly, both from Aries, but also from Taurus, especially under the guise of food and security and stability and resources and money. So, we're going to hear a lot of over the next month or two, because Mars will be in the skies for about maybe a month and a half, almost 2 months, in the sign of Taurus. We're going to hear a lot about finances, the markets, food. I know some of you guys are burned out. You're I get it, but you're really going to get it when you start to see the conjunctions taking place between Uranus and the North Node, because likely something very out of the blue is going to be unveiled in regards to some of these topics. Now, Mars is also going to be about in the sign of Taurus, not just dealing with Venusian things. So, we want to make sure that we're working hard for something that's going to bring us pleasure. We're working hard for something that's going to make us feel good or make us feel safe. It's like slaving over a meal that is going to be homemade and like delicious. It's, taking the time to go and, prune the garden and work the field and, lay the fertilizer and get everything ready to go. But there's a darker side of Mars and Taurus as well. There can be things that can come up that show where we are too stubborn or too rigid. We're too focused on luxury or excess or beauty to the point where we can be a little bit more aggressive. There are a handful of just some gnarlier fixed stars within the first 10 degrees of Taurus. And so it's not unusual when we see Mars in a Venus sign that there can be more conflict or there can be more aggression, especially towards women. Now, something else that I think is going to be really highlighted during this time is going to be anything in relation to the Earth. We know that the sign of Mars is hot and it's dry. The the planet Mars is hot and it's dry, and then the sign of Taurus deals with the Earth. So I'm looking for, as this buildup continues and we see conjunctions to both Uranus here and the North Node, and then eventually squares to Saturn, which will be right around here. These are going to be the hot spots. Something relating to like tornadoes, something relating to earthquakes, anything in relation to just hot air and earth and what materializes from that. Now, I don't say this to like promote fear, but we know with Uranus and Taurus, the earth can be very rebellious and it can respond in some very volatile ways. When we see Mars come into conjunction with Uranus, it makes me feel like there can be sudden sparks and fires. There can be electrical fires or energy issues that we have as a result of like a natural disaster. So these are things that I'm anticipating might really heat up. Now, I'm going to note the dates that I think are going to be most prominent in the midst of these transits. One of which is when Mars and the Moon and Uranus are all aligning, because I look for the Moon to trigger events. So we don't need to wait until Mars and Uranus conjuncts. We don't need to wait till the North Node and Uranus conjuncts. We will see things happen prior because of the lunar transits. So the day to watch is going to be round about the 21st, maybe give or take a day on each side, as the Moon moves into its exaltation in the sign of Taurus, but it conjuncts Mars. So there's fiery frustration and passion and aggression. On the flip side, Mars and Taurus has stamina. It's like a freight train, and once it gets going, there's no stopping it. So if you're somebody who has Mars and Taurus, it might take you a little bit of time maybe to like get out of bed, get things going, get ready. But once you start your day, once you've had that cup of coffee and you've had breakfast, it's like you could work 16 hours and you won't stop. So there is a sense of real stamina that comes with this transit of Mars and Taurus. I feel like also one other thing that we're going to see is just a real increased talk about sex drive and things relating to fertility and things relating to, actually like birth and children. I think we're going to hear more about population stuff. I think we're going to hear more about what steps are being taken to either assist or decline population numbers. It's kind of hard to say, but when we have a great deal of planets that are hanging out in Taurus and also in Cancer, everybody's going to be talking about their security, their home, their family, their children, their money, right? But also these are very fertile signs because Cancer deals a lot with the womb and maternal things or women, and Taurus deals with fertility. So we might see that there's like this incentive or talk about feeding children, feeding families, rising birth rates, trying to incentivize people having children, whether or not people want to have kids. If we are finding out that there's going to be new technological advancements of fertility. And I think that we're definitely going to see this. We've already seen some of this come out already. And it's also kind of the beginning process of easing everybody into what I think is going to be like transhumanism and this infusion of technology, Uranus, and the body, Taurus. Now, however long that takes, you know, we would have to really go through it and look at the transits and the conjunctions that are going to be happening around 18 degrees of Taurus. So if that's something that interests you and you want to hear more about that, I'm actually going to be teaching a live webinar this Sunday. It's going to be Sunday. Sunday at 10 o'clock a.m. Pacific time, and that's going to be 1 o'clock p.m. Eastern time. If you can't join us live, no worries. We will send a playback link so you can listen to the whole lecture. And I'm going to be doing a visual presentation, and I'm going to be talking about Uranus conjunctions with the North Node throughout the ages and looking at past historical things that have happened, and then start talking to you guys about what is coming. I'm going to cover the financial markets, what's going to be happening globally, politically. We're going to take a look at Bitcoin and the stock market chart. And I'm going to start talking to you guys about practical ways that you can prepare for this. And I'm going to provide a PDF also for you guys so you have all kinds of information about all the trigger dates that's going to bring this up again, and also how it's going to be affecting each and every one of the 12 signs in depth. So if that's something that you're interested in, do consider clicking the link below. I'm offering $10 off my webinar if you purchase the ticket prior to Sunday, so it's a pretty good deal. And we're going to be doing it live, so there's going to be like a private YouTube link, and you can get in on the chat, and I'll be doing like a Q&A afterwards. So, but kind of the preview of what I'm going to be talking about is some of the dates that I'm giving you actually for the next couple of weeks. This would be one of them, the 21st. So as this conjunction happens, I think that we're going to see this emphasis on what Mars in Taurus really is. Having Mars, like I said, in a Venus sign, it's going to bring up themes of like slowing down, getting aggressive, stubborn. We may be fixated on acquiring things or having things our way. So it's interesting that the North Node in Taurus is like what I value, what I own, what I possess, my money, my resources. And Uranus is like throwing a bomb into the whole situation, saying like we all need to upgrade what it means to be wealthy, right? And this is like just somebody who has, I have a Scorpio stellium in the second house, so I'm like an honorary Taurus. It's been a really insightful last couple of months for me, just like the South Node going through there and hitting, you know, all of my planets and my sun being there and making me realize like, you know, what am I working for? You know, what am I working for? What do I value? What is it that I want to create? What contribution do I want to bring to the world? And how is it not just information that I relay and what I talk to people about and help make them feel secure and kind of better plan their life, but like what can I create? So it's it's been like this process of me having to go through all of like these you know, hobbies and like rediscovering some things that I really like, that I'm really good at, and like developing new things and having like a real fixation on being like, I want to live more sustainably. I don't want to have to be buying things. I don't want to use plastic. I want to be growing my own food. So it's really upended a lot of things for me personally, and really changed and transformed the way that I look at resources and what it means to be wealthy. And I would just assume that this may start happening for a lot of people who have really strong Scorpio placements, especially if you have like Pluto in Scorpio or maybe your sun in Scorpio. And it doesn't mean it has to play out the same way, but it can just mean that you start looking at things going like it's less about consuming, it's more about what you're actually bringing to the table. Something I've been thinking about a lot just in the brief time that I've had over the last couple of years of like trying to grow a garden. Unfortunately, I live in Las Vegas, so like everything will just fry depending on what it is that you plant. But I do try. I have done that the last 2 years. And I've started actually taking like scraps, like lettuce heads and other bits and pieces and scraps, and started either using it as like composting stuff for other potted plants, or I've also been like saving coffee grounds and kind of dispersing that. But I've started taking produce that I would throw away, and I started regrowing it. And it made me realize like, wow, it takes a really long time to do this. And the more that I play a role in making my own food or growing my own food, I've become really adamant over the last couple of years of like not wanting to eat processed food and not wanting to eat stuff that's going to be in a jar or in a can. I want to know where my food is coming from. I want to create it myself. The more work I put into it, the more work that I'm also putting into like trying to grow a garden and things, the less wasteful I am. I realize how long it takes to grow lettuce, how long it takes to produce tomatoes, how long it takes for natural cheese or yogurt to set up. and I'm much less wasteful with the products that I have than maybe I have been in the past, where we have become accustomed to just like going and like buying like a sandwich or a burger or a pre-made salad or something, or maybe we just buy a bunch of groceries and, oh, we don't eat it, so we throw it away, we waste it, right? So this has been coming up for me a lot, realizing that wealth really comes from self-sustainability. And it's really pushed me to go even further in this direction, to be like learning about composting and homesteading and like, you know, possibly even moving. So that's something that I'm really excited about, is being able to shift gears and possibly being able to move to a new city where there can be a little bit more land, and hopefully I can get some chickens and start a garden and do some things and just really focus on getting back to basics and having like a much more simple life. And so it's just been this real shift for me. So I'm curious how it's affected other people. But back to this, I would say this is the day that you want to watch. It's going to be the 21st, really through the better part of the 22nd. And that's because the moon will conjunct Mars. So we'll feel that exaltation of the moon in Taurus, and we'll feel like, oh, I got to get going on something. I got to do this. Look for the passion and the drive. If it's, you know, having a romantic time with a loved one, if it's tending to a garden, if it's going to a farmer's market, if it's deciding that you want to paint something or create something, lean into that. But we won't just feel the conjunction of Moon Uranus, which is like, whoa, suddenly doing something different. But the moon conjunct the North Node is really nice because it's allowing us to kind of lean into what is going to help us feel more stable and secure. It will trine Pluto, which is about redeveloping our own personal power. And it will also come into a square with Saturn. So we're going to feel that pinch of, well, how things have been done and where we've been restricted. It's really bringing up this theme of the individual versus or alongside the collective. And I've seen this materialize as like bartering. I've seen this materialize as like huge changes in, you know, joint purchasing. I've seen a lot of people buying land together and developing it, buying houses together and living in it. I've seen people do like group funding and things in relation to just resources and pooling resources together, especially people who haven't been able to get certain products or items, and they're getting it from people in other places. So that's been a really interesting thing as well. Another time that you're going to want to watch for is also going to be as Mars starts coming into probably the square with Mercury, right around here. So Mercury will be in Leo, which is really proud and kind of boastful, and really, it's got a lot of soul. With that square to Mars, there's definitely going to be some kind of conflict of ideas and like how we actually achieve a goal or get things done. And we're going to see a little bit of conflict and arguments revolving around my ideas versus others' ideas, or how I believe things should be done versus how I'm doing them. There's going to be a lot of need for like introspection and reevaluation throughout this Mars transit, and really asking ourselves if our actions are really aligning with our belief system and our values. Then we will see the Moon Mars square here again on July 29th. And we're seeing Mars get closer and closer and closer to Uranus, which is kind of like explosive and sudden and daring and very risky and out of the box and unusual. This is another day to watch, July 29th, not only because we're going to see the moon square Mars, but also because we're going to see the moon come into conjunction with Mercury and oppose Saturn. I'm assuming this is going to be new limitations, right? Us finding out or realizing that there's going to be more setbacks or some kind of limitation. This may be the very beginning. It may not really materialize, I think, until the full moon in Aquarius that we'll be having in August. But you want to watch when, you know, when the moon is going through these squares, and then as Mars comes into its conjunction with the North Node, which is going to be August 1st. Fighting for something. I've kind of had this vision over and over that the Mars North Node Uranus conjunction is like putting TNT at the base of a mountain and blowing something up. So if there has been some sense of us lagging, we're not wanting to get something done, you know, this conjunction is going to just totally blast through something and help us really move further into the future, especially with that conjunction to Uranus. But perhaps This may also be, for many of us, this realization that there are major global events and major global weather patterns and things that are disrupting, food production, food transportation, anything of that nature. Now at 18 degrees, just to kind of lightly touch on it, it is going to deal with health. It is going to deal with the service industry. It is going to deal with anything in regards to workers. And Uranus deals with unions. So I'm wondering, like, what's going to happen? Are we going to see like a bunch of union strikes? Are we going to see a bunch of workers really push for better conditions? Are we going to see lots of farmers and people who produce agriculture products for us like revolt? I talk a lot about this in my webinar. But this is the hot spot when that Mars North Node Uranus happens, that conjunction. You're going to be feeling it really from like the end of July on, but let's just say once the moon squares, it's on like Donkey Kong from July 29th through the better part of when this conjunction is finished around August 2nd. Now, even then, as Mars touches on the North Node, which is saying, what are we passionate about? What's bringing us pleasure, right? What do we need in terms of pleasure? And how do our bodies feel? And how are we taking action to create art or love or more resources? Are we really focusing on being in nature? That's something that I would really think about as well, because Taurus is very earthy. As that Mars conjunction fades, we then start seeing Mars come into the square with Saturn, which is going to be perfecting somewhere around August 7th. So the first 10 days of August is like, I feel like it's probably some of the more explosive transits all year. I liken the Mars North Node Uranus almost to like an eclipse energy, especially because Uranus will station at 18 degrees. It'll go back and forth over these particular conjunction degrees for quite a while before it drops back down into 17 degrees. So it's going to be there for a bit. Then it's going to get re-triggered again somewhere actually around the eclipses in the fall. So then we have Mars come into a square with Saturn. So first it's like this, we're building towards something really now at the beginning of July, and then it starts building up momentum at the end of July going into August, and then it wants to radically change and transform something and blast through restrictions and barriers. And Mars can have this feeling of being like, there's no stopping me now. Once it's gotten into the third decan of Taurus, there's no slowing down. Being that the square is happening on the right-hand side of Saturn as well, does give Mars the advantage. It does give it the higher standing point or higher vantage point, because it's the opening square from the conjunctions that we had earlier this year when Mars was in Aquarius. So it does tell me that this is like the reckoning from things that really we've been talking about and discussing for some time. So I'll take you guys back to when Mars and Saturn were conjunct. This was happening right around April 5th. So you want to think about what you were committing to, what you were really focused on, what you were starting or beginning. The Mars-Saturn archetype is quite intense, actually. It's just kind of like, do it this way, do it in this sense, like be reformed. It's really like Mr. Miyagi, right? Wax on, wax off. This is how we do it. So now this is going to be really like the first challenge as Mars comes into the conjunction with Uranus and things magically, physically appear. We're going to see physical transformations, like physical dollar amount changes, physical body changes, physical earth changes, financial repercussions for some of the restrictions. Inflation obviously was kind of expected after several years of what's just gone on in the world and printing money, and the list goes on. But with the North Node in Taurus, we're going to see increased inflation, increased food costs, increased energy costs. We're going to see, lots of wild stuff going on with the conjunction with Uranus and the North Node as well. So I'm imagining that like shift is really hitting the fan, and we become aware of some of the real physical effects, and I would say delays coming from, from production, right? So we've seen like lots of delays in processing things and getting food to people, and 2 years of having, less people like actually like working and developing food and resources. So that supply chain issue is really going to kind of hit home hard. And I feel like where the transits in Aquarius were more about like the truckers and what the truckers were doing and what they were saying in terms of not being able to get things in and all kinds of hang-ups in regards to the health challenges, we'll just call it that, and their ability to fight for freedom, right? Mars, Saturn, and Aquarius. The next up is going to be the commoners, Taurus. It's going to be the farmers. It's going to be the people who are growing the food, producing the food. It's going to be artists. Now, I speculate that this is going to spark something where a lot of people are going to get really adamant about creating art, and art that's going to make a difference. And there's going to be a lot of competitiveness revolving around art and, what is valuable or what is being purchased. So this might spark up stuff revolving around NFTs, various new types of art that are going to be developed. The list goes on. So you really want to pay attention to right around August 7th as that square perfects. Personally, I think we're going to feel a little earlier. I think we're going to be feeling it on the 5th because the moon in Scorpio is going to be in its detriment in conjunction to the South Node, so we're emotionally releasing and letting go. So there's likely going to be triggered events at the beginning of August that are going to be financial, that's going to bring about a little bit of like, oh my God, now what do I do? How do I get my resources? Where do I get my food from? Where do I get my money from? I can't get something out of like an ATM. There's going to be hangups with digital stuff and energy. Could be that there's going to be energy fallout and that we have, parts of the world or parts of our country that is having issues with the internet or having issues with power, which in turn can limit sales or ability to exchange, right? There's no surprise looking at some of these aspects that we're actually moving towards like a cashless society. I think that the first kind of inklings of that really has started, as a result of the last couple of years with like the coin shortages and like, people not taking cash. And eventually, I believe the North Node Uranus conjunction is going to be about moving towards a cashless society, trying to get everything more kind of like digital, and where banks or banking, Taurus, is really revolutionizing the way that we look at money and valuables in general. So I'll just leave it at that. But as Mars comes out of its square, finally, that'll begin at right around the 9th, but I think we're going to feel that pretty intensely again right around that full moon that's going to be happening here in Aquarius. Looks like it's going to be around 19 degrees. And it's going to be conjunct Saturn and also square Uranus. So that full moon at the 10th or the 11th of August is going to be like the grand finale when a lot of people are like, oh my God, then this is happening, to see an Aquarius moon ruled by Saturn with the moon conjunct Saturn and also square the modern ruler Uranus. That's going to be a biggie. One other thing that I didn't really touch on, and I'll touch on this now, is that we can't just purely look at Mars's transits. I mean, we can, knowing that, Mars is going to be required to really focus on working or building or bringing things in that are going to be beautiful or sustainable or more organic or natural. But we also have to look at Venus because Venus is what rules Taurus. And so one thing that I do notice that is interesting throughout these Mars transits is that Venus in Gemini is building into a trine with Saturn. And that's going to be pretty strong here from the better part of like July 11th through the 14th. So you see Venus moving through the sign of Gemini, coming into a trine with Saturn. So Venus is the traditional ruler of the North Node, and it still has some affiliation because Mars is in a Venus sign, right? So that's interesting. Then we're going to see Venus leave the mutable air sign of Gemini, where it's much more communicative and chatty and a little bit more intellectual, right? It's air, so it's a little bit more intellectual. Loving that as we're coming into some of the conjunctions with Saturn, it's trining Venus, so that's really stabilizing things, and we're communicating and expressing love and values. It's really important that we're doing that on the 15th. Mid-July really is kind of like that sweet spot before things get kind of wild from the end of July through August. So it's like really enjoy the first 2 weeks of July is my recommendation. Venus then changes signs and enters into the sign of Cancer, which is a cardinal water sign. And so then we've got, it's a slight sextile, but it's a sextile. We do see Venus in positive harmonious aspect within about a 9-degree sextile to Mars. So Venus and Mars sextiling each other is Mars saying, hey, this is what I'm working on. And Venus says, yes, that makes me feel good. That makes me feel safe. So we're going to see lots of talking about people going, okay, we're moving, we're renovating, we're selling. I'm still going to speculate between these sextiles and also this opposition between the moon and Pluto, that there is going to be a lot of information coming out about what we can do with our homes, what we can do with our land, what we can and cannot purchase. I mean, I don't know if you guys have been hearing about this, but it's like the market is so challenging to buy a house. A lot of people are talking about getting outbid. A lot of people are putting in offers and they're not able to get homes, even though they have adequate credit and they have, financing options, and they're, I guess like preemptively applying for loans and they're qualifying. We're seeing lots of homes getting bought up by major companies and basically making it really challenging for people to be able to own their own home. And I think we're going to hear more about that. And there might be, things that are coming out in the world or politically or government-wise that's really highlighting the fact that it's becoming more and more difficult for us to feel like we have our own space. Cancer deals with like the shell and where we retreat and where we hide. And both Taurus and Cancer are very focused on security and stability and having the resources that we need to thrive, right? So when Venus moves into Cancer and it's in harmonious aspect to Mars, we've got the South Node Lord and the North Node Lord harmonizing and kind of working together. And we're realizing that now Cancer can start reaping the benefits of what Taurus is really working on building. Now we will see, because Venus is going to speed up a little bit, that sextile really continues for quite a while. I'm really liking also the 25th and the 26th of July as we see the moon come into conjunction with Venus and also sextile. So while things are radically changing and transforming and life is kind of coming at us very quick and we're finding that we're needing to kind of shift and pivot our resources, Venus is standing by in Cancer saying, I'm doing this intentionally so we have a more safe and secure home, or we're focusing more on what we're building in regards to our home base. Venus has been in a square to Jupiter, so there is this sense of feeling things quite intensely, needing to act, individuals being very emotional and sentimental. Some people may not want to move or sell their home. Some people may not want to relocate. Some people may feel as if they're more willing to travel and expand and get more adventurous with where they're willing to go in order to find like a much more stable and secure home. Now, I've thought for some time, and we'll see this even more so as Uranus goes through the sign of Taurus, that like cities are going to be something that may be a thing of the past for a period of time, maybe until we see like Saturn and Uranus go into Gemini, years down the road. Perhaps maybe then we do see cities kind of come back into full swing. But I have a feeling a lot of people are going to be moving to land and properties that they can have food that they can develop, or land that they can develop for food. So being able to grow things, being able to have livestock, being able to have more control over knowing where their resources are coming from is kind of the feeling that I'm getting. It's going to be stemming from this. And then we watch Venus continue to sextile Mars really all the way up until this Mars North Node Uranus conjunction is happening. I mean, even there, it's within about less than a degree. So I've found that interesting too, that in the midst of the Mars North Node conjunction, Venus is in an exact sextile. So you've got that happening at 18 degrees as well, that perhaps people don't like the direction that things are going in, that we're finding out that cattle and beef and other livestock is about to be genetically modified, and there's going to be gene sequencing. Perhaps maybe we find out that there is going to be limitations on how much you can buy or what you can buy, which prompts people to go, not here, I don't want to do this here, or I don't want to be in this space or this place where options are going to be limited, which is going to prompt people during the time of this conjunction to start looking for other options, right? And as Venus then comes into a trine down the road also with Neptune, I'm anticipating that this is going to be this realization that it's emotional and it's challenging, but that if we can dream it, if we can, ask for assistance, pray for it, also be looking for spaces where there's going to be clean or healthy water and other resources, we can facilitate and make that happen. But still, Mars being the ruler of the South Node coming into a square with Saturn is insinuating that we are all going to have this brutal awakening at the beginning of August, that we need to adjust our lifestyle. We need to adjust how much we're consuming, how much we're spending. We need to be aware of how we're affecting the planet. Certainly, I think this is also going to be new solutions in regards to energy. We may find that, they are fanning the flames, telling everybody that there is an energy crisis and that we need to make some segue into, new ways of fueling things, whether this is going to be like new solar energy, or this is going to be energy that's going to be from like natural gases, or this is going to be energy that we get from wind and earth. I'm not a scientist. I can't say whether or not there is an energy crisis. I will tell you that with North Node Uranus square Saturn, it's almost like an energy or a food crisis that's being created. It's artificial because of the conjunction with Uranus. I also feel like if we had some of these crises that were as serious as they were saying, we would not be putting so much energy or resources into other things. Like certainly like this might be the next thing, it's like save the planet, do this, do that. And I'm not saying I'm not for that. I'm saying that there seems to be either lobbying behind this, or it's going to be incentivizing laws and regulations that are going into place to get people more on a digital kind of map, right? So like when we are finally in digital cars or electric cars, and we are all on a cashless digital system and everybody is linked, then there is going to be a sense of there being more control, because they can turn a car off, they can decide that they're not going to allow you to spend X amount of money on food, or that you have used up your mileage for the month, or the list goes on. So that's more of what I'm seeing, and I think that this is going to be driven by a narrative that's being created that's about saving the planet. I also feel like Taurus is culture, and so one of my biggest concerns with this is that there's going to be a lot of wanting to unite people with that North Node Uranus, but with the square to Saturn, it's going to be disrupting our culture. Certain cultural practices, artistic practices. I think of Mars and Taurus as dance. I think of this as like music. I think of this as people who are glazing pots, and they are creating ceramics, or they're making music. Like with the square to Saturn, I feel like there's a lot here that's being threatened, because there is this push for a one world, unification, one world government, or one world kind of culture, that everybody becomes this melting pot, and that everybody is united and everybody is the same. And while there's some truth to the positive effects of wanting to unite us through these transits, the negative, I feel like, is we're losing our culture. And specifically cultures that are really, really, really tied to the food that they eat, where they come from, what they cook, what they grow. And if we start giving this away, and if we stop focusing on really teaching these artisan crafts, we're going to lose it. So if you know how to play an instrument, if you know how to make a particular type of bread, if you know how to cook, if you know how to grow food, if you're a sculptor, a painter, if you sing opera, these things are so important to continue and keep going, because as we see the conjunction with Uranus, we're going to start trading handmade sculpture pieces for what's going to be fabricated 3D printing. We're going to see people who go, well, why would you play the guitar when I can, put it into a computer and I can create that and generate that, and it's going to be perfect and it's not going to have any flaws. Perhaps maybe flaws and being able to see that fingerprint in a piece of art, or the flaw that might be in something that's been hand stitched, is what is beautiful. It's what makes it natural. It's what makes it handmade. And perhaps there is like this attack on things that can be natural, organic, or made on your own. So if you specialize in anything like that, I encourage you to not only keep doing it, but teach other people, train other people, keep this going so we don't lose this part of some of our heritages and some of our history. It's really important that we keep doing this. Hopefully you guys have found this insightful, and it's given you a little bit of food for thought. Just touching on this Mars transit now, I would say it's really about coming up with a plan and thinking about what it is that you're working towards, what it is that you're going to radically do differently. For a while now, I've been thinking about this North Node Uranus conjunction in Taurus, and I've thought, like, what if the most radical thing I could do is to like do things more traditional, right? What if it is to say, you know what, I'm going to create a cookbook, or I'm going to start jarring or pickling things. I'm going to start preserving food. I'm going to start a community garden, or I'm going to learn how to dye my own clothing. I mean, I know some of this sounds like extremely radical and like very like Amish to an extent, but there's something to being able to learn how to do some of this stuff. It's going to be very punk rock to grow your own vegetables. It's going to be very like fuck the system to say I can make my own soap, or you know, I can create my own clothes, or I can find my own way of bartering and being able to kind of beat the system and find ways to still live life without feeling like I am being trampled on. So let me know, how are you guys anticipating this energy is going to go? How are you feeling it? Are you having some of the same feelings? Does this incentivize you to want to band together with other people and create community and start getting back to a more kind of natural life in all ways, shapes, and forms? I'm finding that it's just me constantly wanting to just make my life a little bit easier, and whether this is decluttering and giving things away, or just focusing on being able to sit outside and gardening, or being in the sun, or going for a walk, or eating an ice cream in the sunshine. I mean, just really simple like Taurus things, you know, and kind of getting back to that and being more aware of the impact that I'm having, and my purchasing power, and realizing that my purchasing power goes a long way. So I would rather that be going to people who are creating things themselves and trying to support those who are being independent, because a lot of people do that for me, make it possible for me to keep doing what I'm doing, because what I'm doing is a skill, but it's not necessarily a Taurus thing, you know? So as a reminder, for those of you guys who are looking to see where this is taking place in your natal chart, I'm just going to run through this for you very briefly. Please listen for your rising sign first, and you can also listen for your sun sign. The rising sign is going to talk to you about what's literally going to happen in your life. So this is the area of your life that you're really starting to build towards, you're getting passionate about, and as July goes on and into August, you're totally going to revolutionize this area of your life, okay? You can listen for your sun sign. Your sun sign is going to talk more about your career or your goals overall, and your moon sign might relate more to you emotionally, or perhaps maybe even your family or your home life, okay? As always, I am a Western astrologer, so this is going to be Western and whole sign predictions. I do work with Placidus, so if you happen to have intercepted houses, or if you have planets that are on the edge, you may want to listen to both signs just to make sure that you fully understand that. But you can use the whole sign method. Placidus is going to more talk about how that plays out psychologically. If all of this sounds like Latin to you, consider clicking my links below. You can book a reading with me. Go to my website at beyondtheveiledtarot.com. I'm happy to see new clients and talk to you about this conjunction that's happening, but also the Mars transit. So if you happen to have any planets between, like, let's say 17 and 19 degrees of Taurus, personal planets, a sun, moon, or rising, this is going to be very potent for you. Definitely a really good time to consider getting a reading. If this is your Mars return, also it's a really good time to consider getting a reading. So if you have Mars between 17 and 19 degrees of Taurus, that can be a good idea. Scorpio, you too. So we're going to start with Aries and Aries rising. Mars is your chart ruler, so this is an important transit. You're really feeling that shift. Now, Mars is moving through your second house, which deals with spending money, earning money, your spending power. You're being incentivized to want to bring in more, want to make more, want to consume more. Mars is the ruler of your first house of the body and your 8th house of other people's resources. So there may be some incentive to be focusing on what you're eating, detoxing, transforming, maybe playing more of a role personally in what you're cooking, what you're eating, or what you're spending, and just a lot of changes that are going on with your resources. For Taurus and Taurus rising, this is important because it's happening in your sign. You've got Taurus, that is the ruler, obviously, of Venus, or vice versa, depending on how you look at it. Venus rules Taurus. So this transit of Mars going through your first house, it's interesting. It's really transformative. Mars in your first house is going to make you a little bit more passionate, a little bit more touchy. You might be a little bit more aggressive than usual. But Mars is the ruler of your 7th house of relationships and also your 12th house of unforeseen situations. So there can be like resentment, anger, frustrations with other people that kind of comes out of the blue that you don't see coming. There can be some real subconscious desires or passions in regards to relationships that start materializing. You want to watch out for being confrontational with other people and being short-tempered. There can be a sense of you wanting to be more action-oriented, and there's like this subconscious drive towards either a relationship clearing or partnering with other people. For Gemini and Gemini rising, we've got Mars going through your 12th house, which is the deep subconscious. It may be a little bit more difficult in regards to sleep. You might be a little bit frustrated or feeling like a little caged in right now. Mars is the ruler of both your 6th and your 11th house. So the 6th house deals with health and wellness. The 11th house deals with friends. Perhaps you have a friend that is helping you through a bit of like a frustration or a crisis. Perhaps you've been feeling like all over the place and you're calling a friend and asking for some assistance and just kind of getting yourself grounded out a little bit better. There can be a sense of endings with certain friendships if that is something that needs to go on. Mars in the 12th house is going to be interesting because it's eventually going to ingress into Gemini, and then it's going to spend a great deal of time in Gemini later this year. So you want to stay tuned for when I talk about that. For Cancer and Cancer rising, we've got Mars going through your natal 11th house, which deals with friendships, associations, anything in regards to groups and, like networking. So there's going to be more action revolving around you networking, seeing friends, being around people. Now, Mars rules your 5th house of children, passion, creativity, and self-employment. It also rules your 10th house of your career. Perhaps you have to work with a friend or you're networking with friends to be able to kind of push a creative project along. Perhaps you're talking about your creative goals when it comes to your career and wanting to start a group or starting a company. There might be goals relating to children. Children may be more active in either sports or games or anything in that regards. For Leo and Leo rising, Mars is moving through your natal 10th house. This is going to be intense for you, Leo, because you're going to see quite a few squares, so buckle up. Mars moving through the 10th house makes you more competitive at work. It definitely puts a spotlight on your ability to kind of shine and be more assertive and take initiative of projects. Mars is the ruler of both your 4th and your 9th house, so it's home and family, where you're living, and also the 9th house, which deals with faraway places, your philosophy and your beliefs. Perhaps you're taking charge when it comes to a home or a family or a domestic situation, and you're kind of finally realizing that you can't teach a family member or a parent. Maybe you're planning a move and you're planning to buy property or moving to another place. Maybe there is a sense of you having to relocate for work and you're waiting on moving depending on where it is that you end up working. As Mars comes into conjunction with Uranus, there's going to be lots of changes in either your relationships or either your professional relationships, which will then in turn affect where you're living. So just hang tight. For Virgo and Virgo rising, Mars is going through your natal 9th house, which is going to deal with beliefs, philosophy, travel, the bigger picture. Mars is the ruler of your 8th house and also your 3rd house. Some of you guys may be learning more about money and resources. Maybe you're having to spend a little money on some continuing education or some training. Mars in the 9th house is going to have you wanting to spend money on travel or going somewhere new, or like I said, paying for a program. Some of you guys may be going through having to sign or deal with documents or paperwork regarding financial loans, especially if you're getting loans that are forgiven because of a lawsuit. Some of you guys are also dealing with legal implications or anything in regards to money owed, so watch for that. Libra and Libra rising, you've got Mars going through your natal 8th house. The 8th house is a comfortable place for Mars. It likes to be there, even though it's going to be debilitated in the sign of Taurus. Now, when Mars goes into the 8th house, it's really lusty, it's very sexual, it's very passionate. There's also a sense of dealing with money owed, so there can be a sense of you having to pay off debt, having to pay debts, or things relating to taxes. It can be a time where partners are making more money and there's more gains going on for business partners or romantic relationships. Now, Mars is the ruler of your 2nd house, of your resources, and your 7th house. So there's some emphasis on the money that you're making with other people, trying to bring more money in. It can actually be a really great period of bringing more money in, but it might be that you go and you have to talk to somebody about how to manage this money. Maybe you're paying different taxes this year. Maybe now you're in a different tax bracket, or you're in a partnership, or you've started a business, or you've opened something new. So you have to figure out how to navigate this. It's a time of getting paid and then paying things off. So as money comes in, it's going to be what you're paying off. Mars in the 8th house can also bring inheritances or other people giving you bonuses or money that's owed to you. Scorpio and Scorpio rising, Mars is going through your 7th house, and Mars is your chart ruler. So this is important because you are Mars. So as Mars goes through your 7th house of relationships, it can be about passion in regards to a relationship or other people. You may be pursuing other people might be showing up, new clients can show up, new business opportunities can show up. It's going to be a very active time. Because Mars rules your 1st house of the self and the personal drive and your 6th house of work, it's very possible that you're working with a partner, a romantic partner, a spouse, or a business partner. It's very likely that through business, you end up meeting somebody romantic if you are single. So watch for that. If you are single, you might meet somebody through work. There is a lot of focusing on health and fitness and organization and cleanliness. So you want to watch for being too OCD with cleaning. There can be conflicts over who didn't do the dishes, who didn't pick up this, that, or the other, and it could lead to some strife. Eventually, that conjunction to Uranus is going to be about you and a partner and anything in regards to home and family or domestic stuff. So some of you guys may have people moving out. Some of you may have people moving in. Some of you guys may have conflict with relationships and family. So watch for that. Sag and Sag rising. This is Mars going through Taurus in your natal 6th house. Now, Mars rules your natal 5th and your 12th, and it makes me feel like you're learning how to organize or staff or schedule things differently when it comes to your own personal business. I get the impression that you're a little wiped out, and I would take it easy on overdoing health or fitness right now. To me, it seems like it's about organizing your schedule first and trying to find ways to make work more self-sufficient so you can have more downtime and more time to relax and recuperate. The 6th house doesn't just deal with schedules and your office space or employees, it also deals with pets. So one thing you want to watch out for is that pets can have health issues, especially because it's the ruler of the 5th, so you want to watch if they have any issues with their heart. Now, on the flip side, if you have children, there can be kids who are having health problems as well, or needing to see a doctor, or they're needing to kind of rest and recuperate because Mars is the ruler of your 5th and the 12th, which deals with hospitals. If you don't have children, it can be about addressing and dealing with childhood issues and anything relating to patterns or habits or addictions that stem from childhood repressed problems. For Capricorn and Cap rising, Mars is moving through your 5th house, and it's in a fellow sister sign, so you and Virgo are benefiting from these transits. As Mars moves through the 5th house, it makes you want to play games, it makes you passionate, it makes you really into love and romance and dating. So if you haven't been doing that, you might feel like you want to. It's very fertile because it's moving through your 5th house, which is children. Many Cap risings are thinking about having kids or trying to conceive. Some of you guys are thinking about launching businesses or trying to create a hobby that could be more creative, that could lead to a change in your profession. Now, Mars rules your natal 4th house of home and family and your 11th house of goals and friendships. So maybe there's parties, you're inviting friends over, you're hanging out with friends in your house, you're celebrating, you're in a new home. Maybe you're having friends meet your romantic partner, so there's going to be dinners that you're having, or maybe you're introducing them to family. There can be just lots of gathering and support at home if there is the birth of a child or any celebrations revolving around relationships. You're becoming really passionate about what your goals are in life and what it is that you want to create. Aquarius and Aquarius rising, this is Mars moving through Taurus in your natal 4th house. The 4th house deals with home, family, and your roots, so it's a great time to focus on a to-do list and getting things done within the home. There can be more conflict with people around the home, so it's like squabbles with family or roommates. There can also be just a lot that you need to get done in regards to your home, fixing things up, or your to-do list. I would recommend doing that because that might offset any conflict that you're having within the home space. Now, Mars rules your third house of communication, also neighbors or anything in relation to siblings or aunts, uncles, or cousins, and the 10th house, which rules anything in regards to your career or your parenting. Perhaps maybe you're having a bit of a squabble with another relative that you're living with about who's in charge or how to handle a situation, and you want to watch because you can get kind of intense with how you're communicating with people within the home. Moving, changing homes, selling homes, renovating homes are all positive under these transits. And eventually, Aquarius, as Mars and Uranus come into conjunction, you might be realizing that it's really time for you to have a conversation with somebody about a move or about how things are going to go within the home space. And last but not least, Pisces and Pisces rising. You've got Mars moving into the sign of Taurus, and it's going to be going through your third house. So short distance trips are possible, focusing on cars, vehicles, anything in regards to reading or educating yourself as well, especially if you want to learn more about cooking or finances or anything just in regards to just learning more about gardening maybe, or just like natural living. Now, Mars rules your natal second house, which is about food, money, and resources and self-esteem, and your ninth house, which is about learning and education. So I really think a lot of Pisces are going to be possibly learning courses, teaching courses, taking courses about any of these topics. You may be more interested in philosophy, and you might be more willing to invest in anything in regards to education, books, reading, or anything in that regard. Great time to be learning tarot or maybe even astrology as well as Mars goes into Taurus, because you can really take your time. All right, so if you guys want more details, obviously, on these transits, check out my July horoscopes for 2022. There's timestamps, so you don't have to watch all the way through, and I go and talk about some of the more important transits for all of the signs. I also put out the July month ahead, so if you want a more general idea of the energies that are playing out, check that out, or you can also look at my Uranus North Node video where I go in depth into some of these transits. But if you want to know how this is going to be affecting you, like I said, at more depth, check out my webinar. I hope to see you guys there. I'll be back in a couple days. I will see you soon. I hope everybody enjoys the rest of your week, and take care.